The soft hum of the city below my apartment window always used to soothe me, but today it felt like a mocking reminder. I sat at my desk, my fingers tracing the smooth silk of my blouse, and stared at the phone buzzing insistently on the glass tabletop. Another message from my mother, probably trying to check in, but I hadn't replied in weeks. I didn't want to. The sunlight hit my framed diploma at the corner of the office, glinting off the polished edges, reflecting a life they probably thought I still didn't have. They thought I was struggling, still waiting for their approval, still longing for their validation. Funny how the truth had become my quiet rebellion. The vibration on the desk made me flinch. It was the same rhythm that had once signaled family demands I never consented to. I let it ring a moment longer before picking it up. One glance at the screen made my chest tighten. Family dinner tonight. Don't be late. I closed my eyes, the memory of my dream car flashing unbidden. The one they sold without asking, the one my sister needed for her so-called healing. My lips curved into a small, ironic smile. I hadn't needed their permission or pity to survive. I glanced around my office, the subtle luxury, the art I'd chosen myself, the silent testimony to nights of hard work and quiet victories. I was here now, and the person they dismissed wasn't the same girl anymore. And yet, the thought of seeing them tonight stirred a mix of dread and anticipation. Part of me wanted to savor their reactions. Part of me wanted to walk away entirely and never look back. I remember the day like it was etched into my skin. I had just graduated college, my dream car parked gleaming in the driveway, a cherry red sports coupe I had saved for over 3 years, working part-time jobs, skipping nights out, and budgeting every penny. It wasn't just a car, it was proof that I could create something for myself, that my dreams mattered. But that evening, my mother and father's words cut deeper than any disappointment I had ever faced. "We sold your car," my mother said softly, as if she were offering me a consolation prize. "It's for your sister. She needs it, it's part of her healing." The room seemed to tilt, my vision blurred. My hands shook, gripping the counter like I could anchor myself to something solid. My sister, 10 years younger, always coddled, always shielded, was the reason my painstakingly earned dream was taken from me. And no one asked me. Not a single word of consultation. Not even a hint of apology. I remember my throat tightening, the lump of anger and hurt making it hard to breathe. I wanted to scream, to throw the vase I had just dusted off, to make them feel for even a second the emptiness I carried. But I didn't. I swallowed it all and excused myself, retreating to my room, the sound of their voices fading into a mocking echo behind me. That night, my grandmother's words came back to me, whispered in her soft, knowing voice during my last visit. "Never let anyone define your worth, sweetheart. They can't take what's already inside you." I clutched the small silver locket she had given me, tracing the initials engraved inside. It was a token, a reminder, a lifeline. And for the first time, I made a choice. Not a dramatic, shouting choice, but a quiet, determined one. I would not wait for their approval or validation. I would build my own path, even if it meant walking alone. That night, with the locket pressed against my heart and tears I refused to cry, I promised myself I would never let myself be used again. I started small, almost invisibly. I rented a modest studio apartment, far from the neighborhood that had witnessed their favoritism and my quiet frustrations. The locket from my grandmother rested on my nightstand, a constant reminder of my promise. I would not let anyone define my worth again. The early months were brutal. I worked long hours at a marketing firm, sometimes arriving before sunrise and leaving after the streetlights flickered on. My fingers often smelled of coffee and ink, my nails chipped from late nights hunched over spreadsheets. I doubted myself constantly. Was I capable? Did I have what it took to build something lasting? But each small success, each positive feedback from clients or supervisors, reminded me that I wasn't just surviving, I was growing. Then came Eleanor, a seasoned consultant who saw potential where others saw a timid newcomer. She pulled me aside one afternoon, her gray-streaked hair tied neatly in a bun, eyes sharp yet kind. Stop shrinking yourself, she said. You've got talent. Let it speak for itself. That simple encouragement became my anchor. Under her mentorship, I learned to negotiate, to strategize, to trust my instincts. She pushed me into challenges I would have avoided, and every time I succeeded, my confidence bloomed. I also invested in small personal victories. The first time I closed a contract worth enough to cover my rent, and then some, I treated myself to a tiny indulgence, a latte at the corner cafe, savoring it as if it were champagne. My first real artwork hanging in my office came from a local gallery, and I smiled at it every morning, thinking of how far I had come. But I kept it all hidden from my family. Social media only showed vague photos, carefully curated to hide the truth of my success. I didn't need their acknowledgement. Their disbelief had already fueled my drive. There were nights of doubt, sure. Nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I would ever feel truly proud of myself. But slowly, those nights grew quieter. My first profitable deal, my first solo client, my first savings account swelling with the result of my own hard work, these were the milestones that mattered. They weren't just numbers. They were proof that I had built a life on my own terms, one they couldn't touch or take away. By the time I finally looked in the mirror and recognized the woman staring back at me, I realized something. Independence isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I was more than right. I was unstoppable. The evening air was crisp as I stepped into the lobby of my office building, heels clicking with quiet authority on the marble floor. I had agreed to the dinner, on my terms of course, but I wasn't walking in to beg for validation. I was walking in to remind them that the girl they had dismissed so easily had grown into someone they could no longer underestimate. The dining room was warm, candlelight flickering across polished wood and sparkling glassware. My parents were already seated, exchanging uneasy glances. My sister, the unwitting reason for so much of my past pain, perched like a delicate doll, a forced smile painted on her face. I let them take in my presence before speaking. My tailored navy suit, the subtle shimmer of my jewelry, the calm confidence in my posture. They had expected a timid, struggling woman. Instead, I was here, grounded and unshakable, radiating a quiet command they hadn't anticipated. "Hello," I said, my voice steady, warm, yet impossible to ignore. "I see you've saved a seat for me." My mother's eyes flickered, betraying a twinge of recognition, maybe even guilt. My father's jaw tightened. And my sister, she just stared, curiosity and unease warring on her face. I let a pause stretch long enough for tension to settle like a weight in the room, then continued. "You might remember the cherry red sports car I saved for myself after years of work. The one you sold for my sister's healing." I allowed a faint, ironic smile. I hope it served its purpose. I hope she feels healed. As for me, I didn't need it. I built my life in ways you couldn't imagine. Their expressions shifted from mild surprise to outright shock as I gestured toward the subtle elegance surrounding me, the office I had bought, adorned with art I loved, a view of the skyline I had earned. "This," I said, letting my hand sweep across the room, "is the result of my choices, my effort, and yes, my refusal to be used." I watched as disbelief rippled across their faces. My parents blinked rapidly, the weight of their past decisions settling uncomfortably between us. My sister's mouth opened, then closed, words failing her entirely. I allowed a moment of silence to reinforce the impact, savoring the quiet authority of truth. Then I dropped the final reveal. I am the CEO of my own firm. I own my building, my clients, my accounts. I've surpassed every expectation you had for me, and I did it without asking for your permission or approval. Everything you thought you could control about me, it's mine now. The room was frozen. Disbelief, shame, even awe mingled in the air. My parents' shoulders slumped. My sister's eyes glistened, a mixture of regret and something unspoken, maybe admiration. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't vengeance I wanted, it was acknowledgement, not from them, but from myself. Standing there, letting them absorb the truth of who I had become, I felt the final thread of my old resentment snap. I was no longer the girl they could manipulate. I was untouchable. For the first time in years, I felt fully in control. Not just of the room, but of the narrative that had defined my life for so long. My parents had once dictated my choices, and my sister had unknowingly benefited from my silence and compliance. That ended tonight. I leaned back slightly, letting the moment stretch. "I'm willing to help," I said, my tone calm but firm. "But on my terms. No more taking advantage. No more using me as a stepping stone for your comfort or validation." My parents exchanged glances, uncertain, but I continued. "Mom, Dad, if you want to be part of my life, you need to respect boundaries. No more overriding my decisions. No more prioritizing one child over the other." My sister, I turned to her, steady and unwavering. "You need to stop hiding behind healing as an excuse to take what isn't yours. You need to grow into your own life without leaning on mine." The room was quiet. The weight of my words hung heavy, each one deliberate, each one a declaration of self-respect. I could see the subtle shifting in their posture, hesitation, awareness, the beginnings of reflection. I added another condition, softer this time, but just as firm. "And if you want forgiveness, if you want to rebuild our relationship, each of you needs to pursue your own dreams, take responsibility for your choices, and leave behind the habits that created this imbalance." It wasn't just about punishment. It was about growth, healing, empowerment. I wanted them to understand that compassion and accountability could coexist, but only if they were willing to embrace it. I watched my sister's face as realization slowly dawned. No longer could she manipulate or rely on me. She had to carve her own path, just as I had. And my parents? They had to confront the truth that their favoritism had consequences, and that their daughter, once dismissed and underestimated, had risen far beyond their control. I sipped my water deliberately, letting the simple gesture punctuate my words. I wanted them to see the woman I had become. Firm, fair, and untouchable. I wasn't asking for anything from them anymore, but I was offering a chance for growth, for healing, for something better than what we'd had before. And as I set down my glass, I felt a shift. It was subtle, but undeniable. Power had finally returned to its rightful place, with me. Not because I demanded it, but because I had earned it. Every small victory, every late night, every whispered encouragement from my grandmother, it had all led to this. Tonight, the balance had changed. And this time, I would never let it tip back. The weeks that followed were quiet, but transformative. My parents, humbled by the confrontation, began to adjust, slowly learning that respect and boundaries were not punishments, but necessities. My mother stopped sending passive-aggressive messages and started calling with genuine curiosity about my projects. My father, though still awkward in his attempts, began acknowledging my accomplishments without a hint of condescension. My sister's change was subtler but real. She started pursuing her own interests, enrolling in classes she had once ignored, exploring hobbies and passions I had long encouraged her to discover. I watched from a distance at first, silently proud, and gradually allowed myself to be part of her journey, offering guidance only when asked. I often found myself holding my grandmother's silver locket, the one that had guided me when I felt invisible and powerless. It now rested on my office desk, a quiet symbol of resilience and the woman I had become. Every glance reminded me I had built a life rooted in my own choices, not theirs. And I realized something else. The pain I had carried, the anger, the betrayal, the nights of doubt, had been essential. Without it, I would never have discovered my own strength, my own voice, my own capacity for independence. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The city lights sparkled through my window one evening, and I paused to take it in. My office, my achievements, my life, all earned with grit, perseverance, and the refusal to let anyone else define me. I smiled, knowing the woman staring back in the reflection of the glass was untouchable, unshakable, and fully herself. And as I finally allowed myself a moment of quiet pride, I whispered to the empty room, to the universe, and perhaps to my younger self, I will never let anyone use me again. I am enough. I am worthy. And I am free. Bottom of form.